We're gonna be the most beautiful girls in this kingdom.
They didn't listen. They just kept cutting. They thought it was just hair. They thought nothing would happen. But they were wrong. Very wrong. Because that girl, she did not belong to this world. And the moment they touched her, something in that river woke up. Something angry. And now, their whole village is about to pay for it. Many years ago, in a quiet kingdom surrounded by forest and river, there was one night every young woman waited for. The night of the royal dance. It was not just a celebration. It was an opportunity because on that night, the prince would choose a bride. And once chosen, a girl's life would change forever. In that kingdom, beauty was not just admired, it was power. The more beautiful you were, the more you were seen, the more you were desired, the more doors opened for you. And as the festival got closer, things began to change. Girls spent hours in front of mirrors. Voices became softer. Smiles became more intentional. Everyone wanted to be noticed. But among them, there were 3 girls who wanted more than just attention. Sandra, Abigail, and Susan. They wanted to be chosen. They grew up together, dreamed together, and made a promise that one day, one of them would rise above the rest. But as the festival got closer, reality started to show itself. No matter how hard they tried, there was always someone more beautiful. Someone people looked at twice. Someone who stood out more. And slowly, that thought began to eat at them. Because in that kingdom, if you went first, you were nothing. That was when they heard the story. Not from the elders, not from the priests, but from whispers. The kind people only say when they're sure no one is listening. They said, long ago, the mermaids made an agreement with the people. One day, just one day, where they could come out of the water and no human would be there. Because before that, humans hunted them, cut their hair, used it for charms. They believed if you had mermaid hair, you could control anything. But after the agreement, the attacks stopped and the village prospered. Most people heard that story and just stayed away. But the 3 girls did not hear a warning. They heard a solution to their problem. And that was the beginning of their mistake. They began making plans on how to execute their evil mission. Finally, that night came quietly. The village slept earlier than usual. Doors closed, voices faded, one by one, without a word to anyone. The 3 girls sneaked out of their homes. No lanterns, no footsteps meant to be heard, only the sound of their breathing and the distant whisper of the river. They did not walk together at first. Each one moved carefully, as if afraid someone might call their name and stop them. But when they reached the narrow path that led to the water, they found each other. They didn't smile or greet each other, just a silent nod of understanding. They had all made the same decision, and now there was no turning back. The path grew darker as they walked. Trees closed in around them. Branches stretched across the sky, blocking out the moon. And with every step, the air around them changed. It became heavier and colder, as though the forest itself knew they were not meant to be there. One of them slowed down. Maybe we should go back. Her voice was low and uncertain. But no one answered her, because ahead of them, the sound of the river had grown louder and closer, like it was calling on them. When they finally stepped out of the trees, they stopped. For before them, the river lay still. Too still. No ripples, no movement. It looked like something was watching them. For a long moment, none of them spoke. Then slowly, their eyes began to adjust, and that was when they saw her. At the edge of the water, where the sand met the river, she was lying there, her body half turned toward the shore, as though she had only just come out of the water to rest. Her skin caught the moonlight, soft and unreal, but it was not her face that held them. It was her hair. It stretched across the sand far beyond where her body lay, dark, smooth, and endless. It did not move with the wind. It did not tangle. It was simply perfect. The three girls stood frozen, because in that moment, everything they had heard suddenly felt real. One of them took a step back. We shouldn't be here. But the others didn't move. Their eyes had already chosen. They were no longer looking at her as a being. They were looking at what she had and what it could make them. Slowly, carefully, they began to move closer. The sand shifted beneath their feet, and at that sound, the mermaid stirred. Her fingers moved first, then her shoulders, then her eyes opened. She looked at them, not as enemies, not as strangers, but as something she had already seen before. Her voice came out soft, barely above a whisper. "Please, don't." The girls froze. "Don't touch my hair." The words settled between them, heavy. One of the girls looked away. "We should leave." But another stepped forward, her gaze fixed on the mermaid's hair, unmoving. "Do you see it?" she whispered. The third girl swallowed. "Imagine what this would make us." The hesitation broke as desire stepped in, and in that moment, the warning lost its power. One of them reached out, another grabbed her arm, and the third moved behind her. The mermaid tried to sit up, but she was weak, too weak. "No, please stop!" the mermaid screamed, struggling against their grip. "Hold her tighter," one of the girls snapped, pulling her hair harder. "She's too strong. Then don't let her move." The mermaid twisted, her fingers digging into the sand. "If you cut my hair, you will die." "Shut up," the second girl barked, raising the scissors again. Another thick strand fell to the ground. It was dark, heavy, and unnatural. "Look at this," one of the girls whispered, almost breathless. "It's glowing. Keep cutting." The mermaid gasped, her voice breaking. "Please, you don't understand." "Oh, we understand perfectly," the third girl said coldly. "After tonight, the prince will notice us." Strands of her long hair scattered across the sand like silk. That's enough, one of them laughed nervously. The mermaid suddenly went still. Too still. Her breathing slowed. Her eyes changed. When she spoke again, her voice was no longer weak. "You will regret what you have done." The girls froze, just for a moment. "Did you hear that? She's bluffing. Finish it." The last cut fell as silence took over. Then the third girl shoved her, hard. Her body slipped beneath the surface of the water, and for a second, nothing happened. The girls stood there, breathing hard, still clutching the hair in their hands. Then, suddenly, the river moved violently. The water twisted into itself as if something beneath it had just awakened. The sky went completely dark. The wind returned all at once, ripping through the trees, turning the quiet night into chaos. "Did you see that?" Before anyone could finish, the river exploded. Water surged upward in massive waves, crashing against the shore, roaring like something alive. The ground beneath their feet trembled. One of the girls screamed, "Run!" That was all it took. They turned, stumbling over themselves, gripping the stolen hair as they fled into the darkness. Branches tore at their skin, feet slipping against the earth, hearts pounding louder than the storm behind them. But even as they ran, they heard it. The water, rising, following them. Then, suddenly, a voice, deep and powerful, cut through the air. They turned, just for a second, and what they saw was not meant for them. The river had parted, and from its depths she rose, a queen, tall, radiant, and terrifying. The water bent around her, obeying her presence. In her arms was the mermaid, her daughter, whose hair they just cut. She was weak and silent. The queen's eyes lifted and found them. Even from a distance, they felt the anger in her eyes. Her voice roared across the storm. "They will pay." She held her daughter closer. "For what they have done to you." The words struck deeper than thunder. The girls didn't wait. They ran, faster than before, not looking back again. Behind them, the river slowly closed. The storm faded. The sky cleared, and the night returned to silence. They ran, not looking back, not stopping. their feet slamming hard against the ground like something was chasing them. One of the girls broke away. She ran faster, desperate to get to her hut right ahead of her. She rushed inside. Bang! The door slammed shut. She locked it, pressed her back against it, breathing hard, too fast, too loud. Then, slowly, silence returned. She slowly lifted her head, facing the small mirror on the wall. Her reflection stared back at her, shaking, afraid. Then something moved behind her, but the room was empty. Her reflection wasn't. She froze. Very slowly, she leaned closer to the mirror. Behind her reflection, the mermaid stood, too close, not blinking, not breathing, just watching her, water dripping from her body onto a floor that wasn't wet. The girl's lips trembled. She didn't turn. She couldn't. The reflection tilted its head, but the girl didn't move. A drop of water slid down the mirror. Then, the mermaid's hair moved inside the reflection, stretching, reaching. "You took what is mine." The voice came from nowhere, everywhere. The girl tried to scream. Nothing came out. Then, suddenly, the reflection lunged forward. She screamed. She shot up from her mat, screaming. Her hut was empty and dry. Oh no, that wasn't a dream. Outside, she heard a loud thud. A bird hit the ground. Another thud. She slowly turned toward the door. Something was wrong, very wrong. The next morning, the villagers woke up to the most terrifying sight they had ever seen in years. Dead birds lay on the ground, their wings stiff and still. Goats that were healthy the night before now lay lifeless beside the paths. A cold silence filled the air. Then the farmers ran to their fields, and their cries broke the quiet morning. The crops had withered overnight. Green leaves had turned brown. Fresh yam vines lay flat like they had been stepped on by something no one could see. "What is happening?" one old man whispered, his hands shaking. "This is not ordinary," another woman said, holding her head. Before anyone could find an answer, a loud drum echoed across the village. Then another. People froze. No one played those drums unless something terrible had happened. The drums grew louder. Then 2 royal guards appeared, running through the village paths. "The chief priest calls everyone," one shouted. "All villagers must gather at the square immediately," the other added. No one argued. No one delayed. Within minutes, the entire village stood in the square, restless and afraid. Among them stood the 3 girls. Susan, one of the girls, could barely stand still. Her hands trembled. Her eyes kept moving from face to face. "We should say something," she whispered, her voice shaking. "Keep quiet," Sandra snapped under her breath, not even looking at her. Abigail folded her arms tightly, her jaw stiff, trying to hide her fear. Slowly, the chief priest stepped forward. His face was dark, his eyes heavy, like a man who had seen something no human should see. He raised his staff. No one spoke. "You have brought something into this village," he said, his voice low but strong. "Something we have not seen in many years." People began to murmur. The chief priest struck his staff on the ground. Silence returned instantly. "Listen carefully," he continued. "The spirits of the river are angry," he said, "very angry." The chief priest's voice grew heavier. "Some people among us have done the abominable." The word fell like a stone. "They have stolen from the mermaids." A loud murmur rose from the crowd. "Stolen?" someone shouted. "From the mermaids?" another cried. The chief priest did not raise his voice, but his next words cut through the noise. "If what was taken is not returned," he paused, "this village will be destroyed." Gasps spread like fire. Mothers held their children tighter. Men looked around confused and afraid. The chief priest lifted his staff again. "You have 7 days," he said. 7 days to confess, 7 days to return what was taken, or we will all suffer the consequences. His voice echoed through the square. "Confess, or we will all be destroyed." The silence was heavy and terrifying. No one moved, no one spoke. And among the crowd, the 3 girls stood frozen. Susan's lips trembled, her eyes filled with tears. "I can't do this," she whispered. But Sandra nudged her hard. "Say nothing," she muttered. Abigail looked away, her heart pounding loudly in her chest. Around them, the villagers whispered in fear, but none of them knew the danger was not just coming. It had already begun. That evening, when the sun began to hide behind the trees, the three girls slipped quietly out of the village. They walked fast, straight into the forest. Deep inside, where the trees were thick and the air felt heavy, they stopped. Then Susan broke down. "I can't do this," she cried, holding her head. "We have to tell them. We have to confess." Sandra turned sharply. "Are you mad? Do you want to die?" Susan shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "But if we don't confess, the whole village will die. And if we do," Abigail cut in quietly, "we will be the ones they will kill." Susan froze. "They will throw us into the river," Abigail said, her voice low and cold. "You heard the priest. They will sacrifice us to appease the spirits." The words hung in the air. Susan's knees almost gave way. "So what do we do?" she whispered. Sandra stepped closer. "We say nothing." Abigail nodded slowly. "We keep quiet, and this will pass." "It won't pass," Susan cried. "Did you not see what happened this morning?" Sandra grabbed her arm tightly. "Listen to me," she said. "If you open your mouth, we are finished." Tears rolled down Susan's cheeks. Silence fell again. The forest suddenly felt darker and heavier. Then Sandra raised her hand. "We must swear," she said. "No one talks, no one confesses, no matter what happens." Abigail placed her hand on top. "I swear." Slowly, Susan looked at both of them. Her lips trembled. Then, with shaking hands, she placed hers on theirs. "I swear." And just like that, their fate was sealed.
She's here.
The next morning, the villagers tried to pretend everything was normal. Women carried their pots to the stream. Children followed them, laughing and playing along the way. The water looked calm, clear, and peaceful. But as one of the girls bent down to fetch water, she froze. Her eyes widened. "Wait," she whispered. The others leaned closer. And then, someone screamed. The water was red, thick, dark, like blood. The entire stream had turned into blood. The women dropped their pots instantly. Some fell to the ground in shock. Others ran without looking back. "It's blood!" one shouted. "The water is blood!" Pots were left behind, sandals scattered everywhere. The women ran straight back to the village screaming. Within minutes, the entire village gathered. Men rushed to the stream. And when they saw it, fear took over. No one spoke. No one touched it. That evening, the chief priest stood before the people again. This time, his voice was heavier. This is only the beginning, he
If
warned.
the guilty ones do not
If the
confess,
guilty ones do not confess,
worse things will happen.
worse things will happen. At the back of the crowd, the three girls stood close together, silent, still, pretending not to understand what everyone else already felt. The next day was worse, much worse. It started with a strange sound, soft, croaking. At first, people ignored it. Then it grew louder and louder until
Hear what?
frogs, thousands of them, came out from everywhere, from the bushes, from the ground, from places no one could explain. They poured into homes, jumped onto people, fell into cooking pots. Children screamed, women ran, Men tried to chase them away, but there were too many. Frogs covered the ground, the walls, the roofs. They're everywhere, someone shouted. People began to flee the village. Some packed what they could carry, others ran with nothing. "This village is cursed," a man cried. "I'm leaving," another shouted. By evening, half the village was gone. Those who remained gathered again at the square. Fear was now stronger than ever. The chief priest stepped forward once more. His face was even darker than before. "I warned you," he said, "and I will warn you again." He looked around slowly. As long as the evildoers remain silent, this village will continue to suffer. His voice echoed, "Confess, or we will all be destroyed." The villagers looked at one another, but no one stepped forward. And among them, the three girls stood again, quiet and still, holding on to a secret that was already destroying everything. That night, Abigail did not sleep. She lay on her mat, tossing and turning, until suddenly she was no longer in her hut. She stood by the river. The water was still, too still. A cold wind blew, and slowly the water began to rise. From it, she appeared, the mermaid, her face calm, too calm. "You have taken what is not yours." Abigail couldn't move. "Please," she whispered. "Return what was stolen," the mermaid continued, "or you will not see another sunrise." Abigail screamed and woke up. Her sweat covered her body. Her heart raced. At once she ran to find the others. When she told them everything, her voice shook. "She came to me. She spoke to me. She said I must confess." Sandra laughed. "A dream?" she scoffed. "You're just afraid, that's all." Abigail shook her head. "No, this is real." Sandra stepped closer. "Listen," she said coldly. "Nothing will happen. It's just an empty threat." Susan looked unsure, but said nothing. And just like that, they ignored the warning. By the next morning, something was wrong. Very wrong. Abigail did not come out of her hut. At first, no one noticed. Then someone went to call her. And then she screamed. People rushed in, and what they saw made their blood run cold. Abigail lay on the ground, her eyes wide, her body still. Her neck wrapped tightly in strands of black hair, long, dark, and wet, like it had come from the river itself. She had been choked. Silence fell over the village. Then fear exploded. Panic spread quickly. The villagers ran to the chief priest. "Please," they begged, "speak to her. Beg her to stop." But the chief priest shook his head. He said, "There is nothing I can do. The evildoers must confess. They must return what they took. Only then will this end." The people wept, but still no one confessed.
That night, Susan could not sleep. Her heart beat loudly in her chest. Then suddenly, the air grew cold. She opened her eyes, and there she was, the mermaid, standing right in front of her, closer than before. Her glowing eyes stared straight into her soul. You are running out of time, the mermaid said. Susan burst into tears. I'm sorry. Then confess, the mermaid said, or you will be next. She screamed and woke up. This time, she did not wait. She ran straight to Sandra. I'm going to confess, she cried. I can't do this anymore. Sandra's face changed instantly. No, you're not, she said. I have to, Susan insisted. We are dying. Before she could say another word, Sandra hit her hard on the head. She fell to the ground, dizzy and weak. Sandra stepped back, breathing heavily. Now, you will see nothing, she said coldly. Then she turned and ran, leaving her there, alone. By now, the village was already broken. Fear gripped every corner of the village. Then, suddenly, the sky changed. Dark clouds gathered. The wind began to roar. Trees bent. Dust filled the air. People looked toward the river and froze. The water was rising. Fast. Too fast. Then, a massive wave formed. Tall, wide and angry. It's coming! Someone screamed. People ran in all directions. Children cried. Mothers shouted. Men tried to find shelter. But there was nowhere to hide. The wave crashed into the village. Huts broke apart like dry sticks. Animals were swept away. Crops disappeared underwater. People were thrown to the ground, screaming, begging, and helpless. Then, just as suddenly as it came, the water stopped, and silence followed. Slowly, the villagers stood, looking around. What they saw broke their hearts. Their homes had been destroyed. Animals were dead. Everything was gone. By the 7th day, the chief priest called for one last meeting. The king, the prince, and the villagers were gathered, weak, tired, and hopeless. Tell us, the king said to the chief priest. Tell us what fate awaits us today. Death, my king, the priest said. If the one who has done this evil does not confess today, there will be nothing left to save. There was silence. No one moved. No one spoke. Then suddenly, a figure appeared, staggering, weak, barely able to stand. Gasps filled the air. It's her, someone whispered. Susan. She walked slowly into the square, her face bruised, her body shaking. Sandra's eyes widened in shock. She didn't die, she whispered. Susan fell to her knees. Tears streamed down her face. It was us, she cried. We stole the hair. We caught it. We hid it. We did it because we wanted the prince to notice us. The entire village froze. There was silence again. Then, the wind changed. The air grew cold. The water nearby began to ripple. And slowly, the mermaid appeared, rising from the water. Powerful, terrifying, but calm. She looked at Susan, and for the first time, her voice was gentle. "You have spoken the truth," she said. "And for that, you are forgiven." Susan broke down in tears. Then the mermaid turned. Her eyes hardened and fixed on Sandra. "You," her voice deepened, "you started this, and instead of you to repent of the evil you did, you tried to kill your friend. For what you have done, you will pay." Sandra stepped back. No, please." But it was too late. The water rose suddenly. Hair, long, dark, alive, burst from the ground. It wrapped around her, tight, stronger than anything human. She screamed, but no one could help her. In seconds, she was gone, dragged into the water. Silence fell once again. The mermaid turned to the people. "Let this be a lesson," she said. "Never take what is not yours." Then she disappeared beneath the water, and the river became still. The people rejoiced, lifting Susan up like a baby for saving the village. The king announced there was not going to be any maiden dance. For what Susan did, he had chosen her to be the prince's bride. Susan gasped. She couldn't believe it. The celebration continued till the next morning. Women danced, children ate, men drank till their bellies were bloated. The prince got married to Susan in a colorful wedding. And from that day, they lived happily ever after. But they never forgot the lessons they have learned. No one ever went near the river again.
Thank you for watching. Tell me in the comments, what lesson did you learn from this story? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories.